This video will provide you with an overview of what to expect in week 1. So week 1 has a bit of a course overview as well as some content. What I'd like you to do is start off by reading the Getting Started book in the syllabus. Take a look at the links in the policy blocks and all of the blocks on the right-hand side. Take a look at the course schedule that can be found in the syllabus so that you can keep track of when your major projects are due. You are then going to learn how to use Kaltura. Once you have learned how to use Kaltura, you're going to practice by using it to introduce yourself in the class forum. You're actually going to be creating a video. Then you're just going to keep going through the rest of the module and check off and complete every activity. Remember, if you have any course-specific questions that are general questions as you go through the material, go ahead and post them in the question and answer forum. If you need to print any of the books, just take a look at the gear icon, which will be on the right-hand corner. I want to give you a brief overview of the topics to expect in week 1. As I mentioned, you are going to do some material that really is just to give you an understanding of the course structure, the different tools that we're going to be using. So you're going to start off with a course overview for class 1. I'm also going to give you a little bit of background information for class 1 so that you can understand what is health and what exactly is this thing called a healthcare system that we are studying. At the end of the class 1 block, you're going to find a folder with your class 2 reading material. Class 2, we're going to begin by going over the history of social policy in the United States. And at first, you might be wondering why a course on healthcare systems goes over social policy. You might also be wondering what social policy is. Well, you can find health in a lot of different types of policies in the United States, in education policy, in policy that addresses poverty. And so I'll set out for you the relationship between social policy and healthcare. And it'll serve as a comparison tool so that when we start to study countries aside from the U.S., we can see how spending on social services may or may not be related to spending on healthcare. We will then go over some background on the structure of the U.S. government. Unfortunately, many of our high schools in the United States have cut out civics. And as a result, I found that students that come to this class are unaware with how our government is structured. And it's important to understand how our government is structured because without that understanding and without an understanding of the unique division of powers that exist in the United States between the federal, state, and local governments and between the 3 branches of governments, then you will not fully understand why we have the type of healthcare system that we have in the United States. Second, you won't be able to understand how we can change the healthcare system that we have without understanding how the various parts of the government work. and how we can approach that government for change. So after looking at the U.S. government structure, we are then going to talk a little bit about the policymaking process and what that looks like in the United States. The purpose again here is to give you some context. So when you're developing your healthcare system for the United States as your final project, you'll understand how to go about doing that. And you'll have the context that you need to propose a viable healthcare reform. Okay, so moving on to class 3. Class 3, we will focus on the structure of the U.S. healthcare system. We'll talk a little bit about the stakeholders that are a part of that system, and we'll do a quick overview of financing. We will also talk about the workforce. Now, each of these key parts of the system will serve as building blocks in which we can compare the U.S. with other countries. So we'll just do a general overview here of the structure of the healthcare system to prepare us next week for talking about the comparative models that exist for healthcare. So in a nutshell, those are the topics that we're covering in week 1. Again, we're starting with just a course overview, the nuts and bolts in the course. Then we're going to be looking at what is this thing that we call health? What is a healthcare system? What does that even mean? How is the healthcare system related to broader social policies, perhaps inequities in social policies? And that'll include some discussion about social determinants of health and racial inequities and cultural disparities. Then we're going to talk about how the U.S. government is structured and how policy is made and what the health policy making process looks like. And then finally, you're going to get an overview of how the U.S. healthcare system is structured, the different stakeholders, the workforce involved, and how it is financed.